Welcome to the Powered Industrial Trucks Training, or PIT. To navigate through this training, click the Next button at the bottom of the screen upon completion of the slide. Welcome to Veritiv's Powered Industrial Trucks, or PIT training. Veritiv previously referred to this equipment as Material Handling Equipment, or MHE. PIT includes various types of equipment such as sit-down forklifts, order pickers, reach trucks, electric pallet jacks, and other specialized equipment powered by electric motors or internal combustion engines. Today's training will provide you with some basic information to help you operate PIT safely. To be certified to operate PIT, you are required to complete the Veritiv PIT training and certification process, even if you have previously received training at another company. This training is divided into 3 modules: equipment, workplace, and the certification process. PIT is common in our warehouses and can be both helpful when used correctly and dangerous if taken for granted. As we continue through this training, keep the safety requirements in mind and ask your certified PIT trainer questions if you are unclear about any of the topics. After finishing this course, you will be expected to describe the principles of safe operations of PIT in the workplace, discuss the different types of PIT, explain the Veritiv PIT evaluation and certification process. Welcome to Module 1, the equipment. We have a variety of PIT and attachments in our warehouses depending on the needs of the operation. This equipment is used for lifting and transporting loads between areas, stacking heavy objects, and loading and unloading trucks. During this module, you will learn about the class and types of PIT, key components, and how the stability triangle works. We will also talk about some of the everyday duties you will be required to perform as a PIT operator. When using PIT, taking care of yourself and others around you is job number 1. To do this, you must follow all safety rules and exercise good judgment. Rules for safe operation will be discussed throughout this training, as well as in the course PIT Rules of the Road. Always remember, safety is the number 1 priority for PIT operators. After finishing this module, you will be expected to know the class and types of PIT. Recognize the primary components of PIT. Understand the inspection process. Know how PIT responds to steering and braking. Understand the visibility challenges of operating PIT. And know the refueling and battery care processes. Let's look at the typical types of PIT used in our facilities. At Veritiv, we use order pickers, stand-up reach trucks, sit-down forklifts, electric pallet jack with single and double forks, swing reach turret trucks, and scissor lifts. Now, let's take a look at the 7 classes of PIT. Class 1 PIT is an electric motor rider truck and include counterbalance sit-downs or stand-up trucks. They have a counterweight in the rear with solid or pneumatic tires, and the operator sits to drive the vehicle. These battery-operated electric forklifts are typically used in warehouses, where lack of ventilation makes the use of propane, diesel, or gasoline-powered forklifts a carbon monoxide hazard. Class 2 PIT is an electric truck of narrow construction to fit in aisles and include reach trucks, order pickers, and side loaders. These specialized electric forklifts are used primarily in warehouses with high stacks of stored goods. Class 3 PIT is an electric motor hand or hand rider truck and include low-lift platforms or pallet jacks. They are motorized, can be walked behind, or ridden on. Class 4 PIT is a propane internal combustion engine truck with a counterbalance and solid or cushion tires, and includes sit-down riders. This class is one of the most common types of forklifts in use. Class 5 PIT is an internal combustion engine run on gasoline, diesel, or propane, and includes sit-down trucks that have pneumatic tires with a tread that is used for traction and stability on rough or wet surfaces. Class 6 PIT is electric or internal combustion engine trucks that are used for towing, not lifting. This class is made up of specialty vehicles. They pull or carry loads but have no forks. Class 7 PIT are used for rough terrain. Used outdoors, these machines tackle large loads in rough conditions. They are powered by gasoline or diesel and have large pneumatic tires. Most pick comes with attachments to use for specialty work such as a roll clamp for picking up rolls of paper. Another useful attachment for a forklift is fork extenders for lifting an oversized load. Attachments do affect the equipment's performance, so be sure to check the data plate or the user manual for capacity rating when adding attachments. Different makes and models of PIT have unique features. However, there are some common features you should be aware of. PIT should have the following safety features: seat belts or fall restraint devices, as needed based on the type of equipment. Fall restraint systems must be used when the PIT has the potential to lift the operator 4 feet or higher, but should be secured whenever the PIT is in motion. Fire extinguisher and properly functioning auxiliary directional and warning lights. Your certified PIT operator will review the specific safety and operational features of the PIT with you during the hands-on portion of the training. Here are some of the common features. 1. Mast. 2. Load backrest. 3. Fork carriage. 4. Forks. 5. Overhead guard. 6. Operator compartments. 7. Counterbalance. The electric pallet jack comes in a walking or riding version. Both have the same basic components, which include forks, load wheels, steer wheel, rabbit turtle switch to control the speed, forward reverse thumb wheel, raise lower buttons, and a horn. Now let's look at the added features of a riding electric pallet jack. Most of the extra features are there to accommodate the rider. Grab bar, standing platform, rubber knee pads. The controls are on the handle and grab bar for easy operation. And the throttle control. Double stacking pallets on pallet jacks is strictly prohibited. Every PIT has a load capacity data plate, which specifies the load weight that PIT can safely lift with different lift configurations or when it is fitted with an attachment. The plate should display the load capacity, lift height, attachment, serial number, load center distance, and brand and model number. If an attachment is fitted to PIT, there is the potential that the dynamic and operating characteristics of the forklift will change. Check the owner's manual or ask your supervisor if you have any questions or concerns before lifting a load. PIT load carrying capacity is significantly affected by lift height or maximum fork height. PIT with high masts have a greater carrying capacity at lower lift height than at maximum lift height. Therefore, forklifts with high masts may have a dual capacity rating at the maximum lift height, allowing the forklift operator to work with heavier loads at low heights. There are important differences between driving a car and driving a PIT regarding steering, cornering, and vehicle weight. Let's learn more about these differences. PIT steers differently than a car. In a car, the front wheels are used for steering. However, PIT uses the rear wheels to steer and the front wheels to support most of the load. Because PIT steer from the rear axle and pivot on the front wheels, the rear of the truck swings wide when turning. Also, rear steering allows the PIT to turn at almost 90 degrees, making maneuvering in tight places easier. When traveling forward on PIT and turning the steering mechanism, the speed of the rear end swing will be 3 times the forward speed of the PIT. This sideways movement creates a hazard, particularly for pedestrians. It also creates a serious risk for injury if the operator has their hands or feet outside the operator compartment. Safety depends on your understanding and controlling the rear end swing while operating the PIT. When you turn a car around a corner, the steering will self-center. On PIT, this will not occur. In fact, the turning circle may decrease. Therefore, it is imperative that one hand be on the steering mechanism at all times. Double fork-length electric pallet jacks require a wide turning area. In all cases, speeds must be kept at a slow walking pace when turning corners. While the average automobile weighs around 3,000 pounds, the average PIT weighs around 10,000 pounds. PIT are also heavier in the rear to counter the weight of items being carried in the forks. And, while cars have brakes on all four wheels, most PIT only have stopping power in their front drive wheels. For that reason, PIT are harder to stop, so they should be driven slowly. Here are some things to keep in mind when driving PIT. PIT is slower to respond to steering changes than cars. Rear-wheel steering allows PIT to turn in a tight radius. When turning, the rear of PIT will swing considerably more than a car. PIT steer easier when loaded than empty. The front wheels support most of the load. And outriggers create a wide base, so it's important to know how much space is needed when maneuvering between objects. Most PIT have a three-point suspension system. The PIT steer axle is attached to the forklift by a pivot pin in the axle center. When this point is connected to the front wheels with imaginary lines, this three-point support forms a triangle called the stability triangle. Watch the next video to get a better understanding of the three-point support system.
Will be easier once you understand a few basic principles. The forklift's wheelbase, or distance between the center line of the vehicle's front and rear wheels, the track, or the distance between wheels on the same axle of the truck, and height, as well as the location of the counterweight and the load's distribution, all affect how it will handle. Almost all forklifts balance the weight of the load on the forks with the weight of the engine and heavy metal plates called the counterbalance on the rear of the truck. Think of a forklift as a seesaw, with the front wheels as the balance point or fulcrum. As long as the force of the weight and height of the load remain less than the force of the weight of the counterbalance in the rear of the truck, the forklift will not tip forward. The force of moving, turning, and the load's height and balance on the forks can easily tip the truck from side to side. Tip-overs are the most serious and largest percentage of all forklift accidents. An imaginary triangle is formed on the three-point suspension of the forklift. This triangle is called the stability triangle and is formed from the front drive tires and the pivot pin on the rear axle. The pivot pin steers the truck and helps the rear wheels move up and down over uneven surfaces. To keep the forklift from turning over, the balance point between the center of gravity of the truck and the center of gravity of the load has to stay inside the stability triangle. The height, the weight, and the length of the load all contribute to the instability of the forklift. If your load isn't properly balanced on the forks, or if you turn too fast, this combined center of gravity may move outside the stability triangle and your truck could overturn.
Remember, staying within the stability triangle is the only way to prevent a tip over. Let's watch one more video on the stability triangle. This video will show you how weight, balance, and height affect the stability of the pit.
A stable forklift and load has a center of gravity which is low and well within the stability triangle. Here are the factors that affect the center of gravity. Load weight is a major factor. As load weight increases, the center of gravity moves toward the load. Load balance affects the side-to-side location of the center of gravity. A load that is not centered will move the center of gravity to the side where the load is heavier. Load height is also a big influence on stability. The higher a load is raised, the more unstable the truck becomes. The higher a load, the less movement it will take to move the center of gravity out of the stability triangle.
The first steps towards preventing PIT tip-overs is to understand and stay within the stability triangle of the PIT you are driving. Here are a few tips that might help. Never exceed the load capacity of PIT. Never turn while on a ramp, either ascending or descending. Reduce speed when taking a turn. Ensure the load is facing uphill when traveling on a sloped surface. Keep the forks no higher than 4 to 6 inches above the ground when traveling. Avoid potholes, dips, and edges. Tilt the mast forward when picking up or lowering a load. Make sure the load is tilted backward when traveling. Never brake suddenly with a raised load. Ensure you have enough space between the mast and an object when traveling through a doorway or underneath overhead obstructions. Do not load the forks beyond the maximum capacity of the PIT. Do not move unstable loads. Use caution when moving oddly shaped loads that are tall or wide. Never travel with the load elevated and never turn with an elevated load. If the PIT does tip, keep your arms and legs inside and hold on to the steering wheel. Do not attempt to jump out. You cannot move faster than the PIT can tip over. Most people who attempt to jump are killed by the impact of the overhead guard. In case of a tip over, don't jump. Hold on tight to the steering wheel. Brace your feet. Lean away from the impact. Lean forward. Tip-over procedures for other types of PIT may vary. For example, operators of stand-up reach trucks with rear entry access should step backwards off the reach truck if a tip-over occurs. Veritiv requires that an inspection is performed on all PIT before each shift prior to use. This inspection will be documented on a checklist that your trainer will show you during the hands-on portion of your PIT training. Before operating PIT, you should ensure the inspection is complete and that no unsafe conditions are identified. Items on the checklist include the following and more: fluid levels of oil, water, and hydraulic fluid. Leaks, cracks, or other visible defects in hydraulic hoses and mast chains. Tire pressure, cuts, or gouges. Condition of the forks, including the top clip retaining pin. Safety decals and name plates are in place and legible. All safety devices are working properly, including the seat belt. If you find any defects, you are required to note them on the inspection form and report them to a supervisor who will make sure prompt service is conducted. Next, let's look at visibility when operating PIT. There are a number of common blind spots and visibility issues when driving PIT. Your field of vision can be obstructed by the mass structure of the PIT, by the load itself, or other structures in the warehouse, such as shelving and stacks of products. Therefore, always travel in the direction of greatest visibility. If your front view is blocked by product, travel backward to improve your line of sight. Use extreme caution at all times. If pedestrians or other PIT are present, make eye-to-eye contact with pedestrian or other PIT operator before proceeding. Confirm the pedestrian sees you by waiting until they acknowledge your eye contact in some way. Never assume they hear or see you. Always use your horn at intersections and pedestrian crossings. Refueling is the job of the operator, whether you are driving propane, gasoline, or electric PIT. Refueling propane-operated PIT seems a simple task, but if not done properly, it could have life-threatening consequences. Safety is the #1 priority while performing this task. Liquid propane is extremely cold when released to the atmosphere. If your skin is exposed to propane while refueling, you can get frostbite. Always wear cold-resistant gloves when refueling. Any propane leak must be taken seriously and reported to a supervisor immediately. Propane vapor is heavier than air and will tend to sink to the lowest lying area. If not adequately dissipated, it will ignite when exposed to a spark or flame. When parking propane-powered PIT for a long period, turn the tank valve off. When refueling, follow these safety rules. Never refuel with the engine running. Always turn off the engine and follow safe parking procedures. Shut off the fuel isolating valve before disconnecting the tank. Always wear cold-resistant gloves and safety goggles when connecting or disconnecting the gas line to a propane tank. Position the tank correctly with the safety relief valve facing upwards. Handle the tank with care, do not let it drop, strike an object, or encounter any spark or open flame. Note, propane cylinders are heavy. Practice safe lifting and carry them the shortest possible distance and lift them safely. Ask for help if needed. Store empty propane tanks in the proper empty storage area and make sure all valves on the empty cylinders are closed. Battery charging and maintenance procedures will vary by location. In general, to keep a battery-operated PIT running properly, it's necessary to keep the battery working efficiently. This requires proper recharging and maintenance procedures. Batteries are charged in a specially equipped area that includes personal protection equipment or PPE, eye wash, and spill supplies. Charge the battery only when it's below 30%. Charge the battery until it is full and then stop charging. Over or undercharging can significantly decrease the lifespan of the battery. Do not interrupt the charging cycle. Check battery cables at each charge for signs of wear and keep them off the floor. Report any damage to your manager. Check fluid levels. Ensure you wear chemical-resistant gloves and safety goggles with the face shields while doing this. Congratulations, you have completed Module 1. We have covered the different classes and types of PIT and the key components. We also learned how driving PIT is different from your own personal vehicle. We explained why it is important to know the lifting capacity of the equipment you are using and how the weight, height, and PIT capacity work together for optimal stability. We learned how critical it is to keep the center of gravity where all weight is concentrated, within the stability triangle. Remember, not every PIT operates in exactly the same way. You must become familiar with the PIT you are operating, how it is designed, and how it works. This knowledge combined with safe driving habits will help you operate your PIT without injury or incident. Welcome to Module 2, the workplace. In this module, we take a look at the workplace and the everyday operation of PIT. We will learn about load composition, carrying a load, the zone of safety, and other daily tasks you will be required to perform and do so safely. Let's start with evaluating surfaces at the facilities. After finishing this module, you will be expected to explain how to assess a load before lifting, demonstrate the zone of safety, explain how to work in narrow spaces, describe how to travel up and down ramps, know the hazards of carbon monoxide, and describe how a forklift operates in a workplace environment. As the operator, you are responsible for changing your approach to a surface based on its condition and the hazards it presents. You may have to slow down or check to see if the surface is competent, such as a trailer floor. Do not proceed if you encounter an unsafe surface. Avoid running over loose objects in your travel path. Pick them up. Report cracks and holes in the floors that are hazardous. Report a see it, say it. Other hazards you may run into are traffic, cracks, gravel and dirt, ramps, dock plates, wet or slippery surfaces, potentially rotten trailer floors. Prior to loading or unloading trailers, inspect the trailer floor to ensure there are no hazards and that it will support the combined weight of the vehicle, the load, and you. Ensure procedures are being followed for securing the truck and/or trailer before beginning to load or unload. Do not proceed if you encounter an unsafe surface. Safety is an important factor when lifting, lowering, or moving a load with PIT. Smooth operation is essential for maintaining stability and preventing accidents. Make sure you do not exceed the PIT rated capacity. Check the load for stability. Unstable loads may fall from the forks causing injury. Also check for broken pallets. Ensure the load is centered. Check that dimensions and weight are within the capacity rating of the PIT. Look for irregularly shaped products and plan accordingly. And ensure double-stacked pallets are centered and stable. Now let's discuss pedestrians and PIT. Every year workers are injured or killed in accidents with PIT. Many of the injured are pedestrians, employees or visitors working or walking in areas where PIT operate. Examples of these types of injuries include pinning pedestrians between PIT and a fixed object, like product, dropping objects off PIT onto pedestrians, striking pedestrians with the body of PIT, and pushing items out of the overhead racking onto pedestrians. Let's learn now about several key factors that contribute to accidents between PIT and pedestrians and how to prevent these accidents. There are several key factors that contribute to accidents between PIT and pedestrians. One factor is visibility. The operator enclosure creates blind spots that can limit an operator's view. Other obstructions, such as pallets stacked with materials, storage structures, or columns, also contribute to the visibility problem. People working or walking into the zone of safety. Risk-taking by pedestrians, which can include workers in a hurry to try to slip in front of or behind a moving PIT, thinking they have time to make it, when in fact they do not. PIT operators not following safe driving rules. possibly by driving too fast or not using their horn at intersections and pedestrian crossings. Pedestrians not paying attention to PIT activity around them. Lack of cooperation between operators and pedestrians. When employees performing different tasks share the same work area, they need to communicate and have a plan for their safety and others. Safety is a shared responsibility. Here are actions you must follow to help prevent pedestrian accidents. Obey speed limits which may change based on conditions in the warehouse. Drive in designated travel paths and patterns. Look in the direction of travel. Keep alert to pedestrians in the area. Yield right of way to pedestrians. Stop and sound the horn at intersections and pedestrian crossings. Give warning when pedestrians might not be aware of your PIT. Avoid getting too close to pedestrians. Slow down when making turns. And stop and look behind before going in reverse. The zone of safety is an imaginary bubble that extends 10 feet around the PIT and follows the PIT as it moves. You must maintain this zone of safety at all times. Pedestrians, to include employees and visitors on the warehouse floor, are prohibited from entering the zone of safety. If a pedestrian does enter the zone of safety, the operator must immediately stop all operations. By maintaining the zone of safety, you are creating a safe environment for yourself and others. If the zone of safety must be reduced, it can only be done at the direction of the location manager or other supervisory staff members. There must be a plan in place that is communicated with all affected workers to ensure worker safety. When PIT must operate simultaneously in the adjacent aisle as another worker, the operator must communicate with the worker to ensure that any areas that present a hazard of falling items are vacated until the work is complete. PIT can weigh more than 10,000 pounds, that's 5 tons. If impact with a person occurs, that force is sufficient to crush bones, amputate fingers and toes, and rupture internal organs. If an operator strikes racking, PIT can cause severe damage or an immediate, catastrophic failure and possible injury if workers are nearby. PIT and employees working on foot must be clearly separated. This includes creating space between pedestrians, stationary work locations, such as inventory checking areas, and all moving lift equipment. So here are the key points involving pedestrian safety. There is a mandatory 10-foot zone of safety around operating PIT that follows the path of travel. Pedestrians may not walk closer than 10 feet, 3 meters, to moving or operating PIT. The only time that the zone of safety may be reduced is if there is a coordinated and planned reduction for certain tasks and areas of operation. PIT operators must immediately stop the operation of PIT if a person on foot violates the zone of safety. Even when there are dedicated or marked walkways in the warehouse, the PIT operator must slow down or stop and make sure there is clear communication between the operator and the pedestrians. The PIT operator is responsible for safely managing the operation of the PIT and the handling of the materials. PIT has the right of way. If you are on foot, stay out of the travel lanes and do not set up workstations in areas where PIT must maneuver. PIT operators have the responsibility to make sure workstations are not going to be impacted by PIT operation. PIT must stop at all intersections and must reduce approaching and in congested areas. Varied facilities vary in size and layout. Some facilities are large with wide driving aisles between the sections of stored products and others have smaller spaces. The amount of stored product and the volume of freight that is handled daily can also vary significantly. PIT operators must be prepared to safely operate pit equipment in both wide spaces and in more narrow spaces. Remember, your visibility may be reduced when in narrow or restricted spaces. Narrow aisles are defined as aisles less than 10 feet in width. Narrow aisles can be either permanent or temporary, depending on space availability at the site. Areas may also become narrow during the time that freight is being staged and worked. Operating PIT equipment and handling a load in a narrow aisle means the lift operator must be more cautious, watchful, and able to recognize potential hazards, which may include insufficient space to safely maneuver the lift equipment and the load, obstructions and other hazards, insufficient width to allow for safe passage of other lift equipment or pedestrians, restricted or limited visibility. PIT equipment operators need to reduce their speed in narrow aisles. Take extra time to ensure the pallet or load is secured. And look around twice and proceed with caution. Check the size of the load to determine if there is sufficient clearance before entering the aisle. You may need to use different equipment or reconfigure the load. Maneuvering the load to the delivery location will require additional clearance in order to line up with racking. Sometimes product will further restrict the width of an aisle. If you do not believe it is safe to operate the PIT in a narrow aisle, contact your supervisor to come up with an alternative plan. There may be a time when you will need to travel up and down an incline. If the incline has a 10% grade or more, the forks must be driven straight up or down the slope. In other words, the load should always face uphill if the PIT is traveling up the hill. If the PIT is coming down the same slope, the load should still face uphill. Coming down a hill with the load facing forward can cause the load to fall off. Also, if the driver hits the brakes suddenly, the lift truck can tip forwards. It's important to note that if PIT is not carrying anything, the rules are a little different. PIT going down a steep slope or incline will need to be driven forks first, as all of the driving and braking is done with the front wheels. Going forks first puts more weight on the braking wheels, giving more traction to the operator. Ensure you travel forward at a low speed with the forks as close to the ground as possible. Operators should go slowly enough so that if the brakes need to be applied in an emergency, the back of the PIT will not lift up. On all grades, tilt the load and forks back so the load does not fall off the forks. If you are driving a propane-powered PIT, you need to be aware of the dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide is odorless, tasteless, colorless, non-irritating, and cannot be detected by any of the senses. Because it cannot be detected, you can be exposed to very high levels without realizing there is a problem. Carbon monoxide poisoning can occur when a propane-powered PIT is used in cold rooms, controlled atmosphere rooms, truck trailers, shipping containers, or in warehouses or other enclosed areas that do not have enough fresh air ventilation. Symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning are headache, dizziness, nausea, shortness of breath on exertion, impaired judgment, chest pain, confusion, vomiting, drowsiness, and visual changes. If you ever feel as if you have carbon monoxide poisoning, stop what you're doing and seek fresh air. Let a coworker know what the problem is so they can call 911 if needed and contact your supervisor. Loading or unloading trailers or rail cars can be hazardous. Follow these procedures when performing this type of work. If the trailer is connected to the tractor, set the brakes on the tractor and chock the wheels on both the trailer and the tractor. Secure the driver's keys to prevent unexpected trailer movement. If the trailer is not connected to a tractor, support it with jack stands. If available, use the dock lock to hold the trailer to the dock. Check the floor of the trailer to ensure that it is strong enough to hold the combined weight of you, the PIT, and the load. Ensure you have enough overhead clearance. Ensure the dock plate is secure and can handle the weight. Use your horn or warning lights when exiting trailer or rail car. PIT should only be driven across railroad tracks at an angle and must not be parked any closer than 9 feet from the center line of the railroad tracks. Never use pit to open or close rail car doors. And blue flag procedures must be implemented before work can proceed in or around the rail cars. All aerial lift operators must be authorized and trained by a third-party vendor with site-specific training completed. Name plates and markings must be in place and legible, load capacities must not be exceeded, and the operator manual must be present on the lift. Ensure you inspect and document the aerial lift prior to use and remove from service using an out-of-service tag until all repairs are made by a qualified vendor. Fall protection must be utilized at all times when utilizing aerial lifts, and the work zone must be established using cones. Ensure that access gates are closed when in use and stand firmly on the floor of the bucket or platform. Never climb or lean over guardrails or handrails. You have completed Module 2 of Veritive's PIT training. Let's review some of the important information we just covered. We talked about types of surfaces and the importance of checking the surface before you start moving loads. Load stability and what to check before lifting a load. Pedestrians and the danger PIT poses to others. The zone of safety and how important it is to maintain that zone at all times. How to work in narrow spaces, the limitations, and solutions. How to drive on an incline when PIT is loaded and unloaded. The dangers of carbon monoxide. And lastly, the good habits when working with trailers, rail cars, and aerial lifts. Welcome to Module 3, the Veritiv certification process, which is broken down into 3 parts. Part 1 is instructional learning, which includes this training course, as well as PIT rules of the road. Part 2 is hands-on training, which is conducted by the qualified PIT trainer and includes an overview of the PIT operations manual, demonstration of controls and characteristics specific to the PIT you will be operating, and practice in the designated safe practice location of your facility. You can only practice PIT operation under the direct and constant supervision of a qualified PIT trainer until you are certified to operate. Practice may not be required for recertification. Qualified PIT trainers will also discuss and review the site-specific PIT rules of the road with the operator at this time. Both the trainer and operator must sign off on this form. Part 3 is the practical evaluation where you will be evaluated on your driving, loading, and unloading skills. Each worker who intends to operate PIT must demonstrate skill, competence, and understanding of the equipment and the expectations for safe PIT operation, or the qualified PIT trainer may not certify the worker to operate PIT. Once you have successfully completed all stages of the certification process, you are able to operate all types of PIT you have been certified on. If you need to operate a different type of PIT, you must complete the certification process for that type as well. Instructional training and site-specific rules of the road must be completed annually, and the hands-on training and practical evaluation must be completed every 3 years to be a certified PIT operator. If an incident involving PIT occurs, the PIT operator will be decertified and must complete the recertification process prior to operating any PIT again. You have successfully completed the 3 modules of this course. You will now be directed to the quiz to test your knowledge. If you have questions, please contact your qualified PIT trainer or your regional EHS manager for more information.